wanted to tell the story of my broken leg. If you follow me on Facebook, you've already maybe seen pictures and text about it, but there's no video record of it. So in late July of 2024, I had a good friend of mine from Quebec leave her children in care of someone else and fly to Nova Scotia to spend time, 4 days with me. So she drove my van to my family's summer cottage, and we had 4 days of child-free time together, which is like a little vacation for me and also for her, but such a huge help to me. And we had 4 beautiful days, sunshine, and just taking our time, having food and chatting all the time, and it was great. Following that, I had 2 nights at the cottage by myself, and then my children and husband were coming on Sunday afternoon. And during that time, I had about an hour and a half on the beach with my children, which was wonderful. And we were supposed to have another week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, together as a family vacation, about 2 weeks, before I was going to have a surgery, like a portal vein embolization on my liver to prepare me to later have surgery to remove the cancers. So that was the plan. And up until the point that my children came, it was a great time. At the same time, in my little area of Amherst Shore, there's a annual gathering that would happen of some families, and they have a annual burn dance. And so this was the 50th annual one of these. So there's a lot of people around it. It was really good for me. I've enjoyed seeing all these people and having some child-free time to visit with people. And now, the evening after my children arrived, I joined the burn dance on my own and had a lot of fun with a lot of people I've known forever. But being me and being tired, I just kind of faded away, walked away on my own to my cottage. And just not very far from my cottage, there was a little slope, and I didn't understand how far it was from that slope. And also, I don't think I understood the extent of my neuropathy in my feet and what that was doing to my balance. And I fell. It was not a big, dramatic fall. It was just a little fall. But when I tried to get up, my leg was trying to bend in the shin. So I immediately knew that there was something quite wrong. And I had broken both bones in my lower left leg. And they were both broken right through and trying to move around. And they were yucky, splintery breaks. It wasn't good. Immediately, I, kind of called for help, and help arrived because it's that small kind of community. And then they called for subsequent help, and I ended up with 3 doctors who I knew them or their cousins or their siblings or all of that for each of these 3 people, and a lot of other people around. And there was another woman who kind of held me, and we talked about stories together to keep me calm, and that was a huge help. And they figured out the best way to get me to the hospital, and got me in my father's car and all set up with splinted and everything to get to emergency. When I got to emergency, I ended up eventually getting into triage and then being abandoned in triage and being completely alone in this room. Even my father had gotten shut out of triage. It was locked when he went to get something from the car. I think maybe my health card. And so I just sat there and I was in pain and I was alone, and I started singing Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. And I sang it as loudly and badly as I wanted to because it was about keeping sanity. And if they heard me somewhere, maybe they'd come and help me. So that was one of the moments of emergency. Later, I was there overnight, and they were figuring out what to do. And eventually, they straightened my leg. I think that was probably 6 a.m. And when they did that, they gave me ketamine. I don't recommend it. Maybe because I was in so much pain and they were doing something really painful. But it was quite a trip. It was very Dr. Seussian and also psychedelic. It was very strange. And at some point, like, I was not me. I was out in the universe. Yeah. And at some point I was like, I used to be a person. I used to be a Janet. I kind of want to be a Janet again. And so it kind of floated back into me. It was very strange. Um, anyway, but eventually I was sent to New Glasgow. Now that's not where I live. Um, and where I live is actually the more central place in Nova Scotia, where my whole cancer team was, and they wanted to get me there, but that's not where I ended up. And I think that was fortunate because I was able to get help right away. And the hospital in New Glasgow was clean, and the staff are very, like, a little bit less stressed than they are in Halifax, and even though they're still overworked, and they were just cheerful, and it was very nice. Now, the surgeon, when I first met him in emergency, this was natal day. I was going to be his third surgery of the day, and it was going to be starting around, I think, 6:30 in the evening. And he was on call that day. It was a holiday. It wasn't even part of his usual schedule. He was on top of that. And maybe that's part of what it was, but also he didn't like my procedure. He didn't like what he was going to have to do. It was going to be really difficult. And so I was meeting this rather grumpy man. And I'm okay with grumpy. I can take it. I learned my lesson from Sesame Street that people are, sometimes they'll say scram, but they might still be reluctantly quite kind. So that's Oscar's story, right? But anyway, he did well with the surgery, and then suddenly we had a different surgeon who was quite cheerful, and it's so kind, and he was lovely to work with. But he kept me there for 5 days because not only had my bones broken, but because I had just been on chemo, my skin was quite fragile, and something happened to the skin that doesn't usually. It was quite raw and bad, and he was quite concerned about antibiotics for me because I've just been on chemo. So he had me on intravenous antibiotics for 5 days, and then I took more for 2 weeks, which became a bit of an issue because, well, maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was the blood thinner that I was on for 2 weeks. And then suddenly I was having my portal vein embolization earlier than we had expected, and I kind of wondered if anybody knew that I'd had a broken leg and was on these medications. Didn't seem like anybody knew, and for me to try to do a phone tag to try to get through to tell somebody to get the information, it took a little advocacy. Not only on my part, but other people had to help me. So that was a bit of a frustration. However, it worked. I had the surgery and everything. It worked out. But in the meantime, I was pretty angry about my fall, and having broken my leg, because this was the summertime that I was looking forward to. Luckily, I'd had, 6 days on my own there, 4 with a friend, which were wonderful. However, I was expecting this family time, and I was looking forward to it so much, and so were my family. And then I was not there, and my children had already separated me for 6 days, and now there's 5 more days. So they were 11 days without their mother at the ages of 9 and 7. And one of them had pneumonia for some of those days. So I was quite disappointed, angry, and also in pain, and also immobilized. So it wasn't a great time. There were still good things about every day. The day after I got back from the hospital, and the reason I got back from the hospital when I did, was that it was my birthday. And it was a rainy day, which is really rare for my birthday. Actually, it's usually been sunny, but it was rainy. And I still enjoyed it because I like rain, and I was finally with my family, and my kids made me some special chocolate treat with cherries that they invented themselves, and it was good. And there are other good moments, where someone would help me get near the water, and where I, still saw people and still enjoyed being at the cottage, even when I was just stuck in my bedroom with my leg elevated for a lot of the time. Out my window was the property of my cottage, where there's a willow tree, and there's it was still there in this beautiful space. So because my ankle was in a cast for like, I think 10 weeks, because it was quite a break, and I had like a rod and screws put into it. I really had to go to physiotherapy and get a lot of support to learn how to walk again. And I did that. I still should be doing it, but I'm losing energy now in February. So it's starting in November. I didn't get to go as much and do as much to support it. But in that time, from mid-September to November, we did a lot of work together. And, you know, I got to the point that I was like mostly walking normally. Because of my ongoing neuropathy, I might never walk normally again. There's always going to be some balance issues. So it's just something I have to accept. But I have been to the beach. I haven't been on soft sand yet. That's a goal of mine. And also I have a goal of being able to walk like off trail in the forest in case there was a certain tree I wanted to visit. So the other thing about breaking my leg was it was much more tangible for my children. So while I knew that I had cancer, and they were sad about that and worried about that, my broken leg was something they could see. And if they like rolled onto it or something, they could hear that it hurt. and it limited what I could do with them even more than just being in bed. Like I could not walk. And so it was like, and you broke your leg, like as if that was almost bigger for them than cancer, because it was just so tangible. So that made their grief and their concern for me bigger, which was difficult for all of us. So that's the story of my broken leg. I, will always walk around with hardware. That's cool. And there were, some lovely moments in it. And I even had like a visit from a friend in the hospital that I had not seen in a very long time. So that was very cool. And my father visited me in the hospital one time, but also drove me back for follow-up appointments a couple times. And so we were able to have some time together, like to eat a meal together, to drive. It's a little bit of a drive from Amershore to Glasgow, and do come along the sea, and even stop at a beach at one point, and stop at like I want to say sheep store, but I think it's probably a yarn store. But they were sheep and they were really cute. And so I had some time with my father that I don't always get, because he has tasks that he worries about in the summer and lives 2 hours away from me in the winter. So that was really cool. And I think there were a lot of cool takeaways about the whole experience. But there was also some anger. So I just had to hold both. So I'm hoping that I get to have some really lovely time at Amershore this coming summer. That's my dream. I'll talk to you later.